Guards found him crouched beneath an abandoned villa outside Rome, hiding in a wine cellar that smelled of mold and old vinegar. In his shaking hand was a small glass vial, poison. He was barely 20 years old. This was Sporus, once paraded as an empress, once married to the ruler of the Roman world, now moments away from ending his life before the new emperor could turn him into another spectacle inside the Colosseum. The execution order was already written, not a quiet death. Not mercy, a public humiliation. He would be dragged into the arena, stripped, mocked, violated, and killed in front of cheering crowds as part of a myth reenactment designed to insult Nero's memory. And for Sporus, death felt kinder than one more performance, because for 3 years he had not been allowed to exist. He had been erased, rebuilt, reborn into someone who was not him at all, not symbolically, literally, physically, surgically. To understand why Sporus chose poison in a dark cellar, we go back 3 years, to the night Emperor Nero murdered the woman he loved most, and decided that reality itself no longer had the right to contradict him. Rome, 65 AD. Nero stood over the dying body of his pregnant wife Poppaea Sabina. Some accounts say it was a single violent kick. Others describe a beating so brutal the servants could hear bones crack from behind the walls. When Nero realized what he'd done, he screamed for physicians, but even an emperor cannot command the dead to return. Poppaea was gone, and something in Nero shattered. This was not grief. This was outrage at the idea that something could be taken from him without his permission. He refused to cremate her. Instead, he ordered her body embalmed with mountains of spices, sealed in a crystal sarcophagus, dressed in her finest gowns. He spoke to her corpse, set places for her at banquets, asked her opinions on matters of state. Her chambers were preserved exactly, down to the placement of a single hairpin. The court waited for grief to soften. It didn't. It mutated. Nero began seeing Poppaea's face in every woman in Rome. Slave girls pouring wine, senators' wives glimpsed in lamplight, terrified prostitutes dragged into palace corridors while the emperor grabbed their faces, hunting for a resemblance that never appeared. Artists failed to capture her essence and were punished. Hundreds of portraits were rejected. Nothing satisfied him. Then everything changed. One afternoon, while reviewing routine appointments, a teenage freedman was brought forward. Nero looked up and froze. The boy, no older than 15, had Poppaea's enormous dark-lashed eyes, her delicate bone structure, even the same amber flecks in the irises. Nero circled him slowly, touching his face like a sculptor examining clay. "What is your name?" he whispered. "Sporus," the boy answered. In that moment, Sporus stopped being a person. He became a solution. He was confined to luxurious chambers beside the emperor. Artists sketched him from every angle. Physicians measured every bone. Tutors noted his voice, posture, gestures. Nero compared each detail to preserved portraits of Poppaea, marking every deviation with red wax, planning corrections. Sporus was forbidden to use his name. Servants called him "my lady." His tunics were replaced with gowns. Cosmetics replaced soap. His voice was retrained, higher, softer, controlled. And then Nero made the decision. Sporus would not merely resemble Poppaea, he would become her. The physicians were ordered to prepare a procedure. Not simple castration, Rome already had eunuchs. This would be transformation, irreversible, extreme, years ahead of its time, yet horrifyingly crude. The night before the surgery, Nero visited Sporus and slipped Poppaea's wedding ring onto his finger. "Tomorrow," he said, "you will be reborn," Sporus whispered. "Will it hurt?" Nero smiled softly. "Birth always hurts, but beauty is worth it." The surgery lasted for hours. Ancient writers spared the details, but not the screams. Servants counted the operation by how long the cries echoed through the stone halls. Infection nearly took him. Fever came and went. Nero visited constantly, adjusting medicine, reading Poppaea's favorite poems, telling stories Sporus was expected to memorize as if they were his own memories. When Sporus finally walked again, the training resumed. Movement lessons, smaller steps, lower gaze, a softened sway. Rehearsed smiles, rebuilt laughter. He studied Poppaea's life, her preferences, her friends, her history, until his own memories blurred beneath hers. 6 months later, Nero unveiled him at a private banquet. Conversation stopped. In the lamplight, with cosmetics perfectly placed, Sporus looked disturbingly like Poppaea. The courtiers understood instantly. Reality now belonged to Nero's imagination. They addressed Sporus as Sabina. Nero beamed, and soon after he announced the wedding. Early 67 AD, Rome witnessed its strangest ceremony. Sporus wore the saffron veil of a Roman bride. Vows were spoken, contracts signed. Nero carried him over the threshold. The feast was magnificent and terrifying. Every senator pretended this was normal. Everyone played along because refusal meant annihilation. From that day onward, Sporus lived in a cage of identity. Each morning he was dressed in Poppaea's recreated gowns, her jewelry, her perfume. There were no mirrors large enough to reveal his full body, only fragments, so he saw only what Nero wanted him to see. He ate as Poppaea, spoke as Poppaea, slept as Poppaea. Any mistake, any gesture that belonged to Sporus brought Nero's cold, dangerous silence. Public life was worse. At theaters, races, religious ceremonies, Sporus sat in the empress's seat while crowds stared at a dead woman's double. Some whispered, some laughed quietly, but no one said anything aloud. Silence was survival. In 67 AD, Nero traveled to Greece. Sporus went with him. The Greeks welcomed Sabina with lavish ceremony. Priests prayed for the couple's fertility. Banquets were held in her honor, a fiction so total it became ritual. In private, Nero demanded reenactments of intimate memories Sporus never lived. He was expected to know how Poppaea joked, how she touched, how she breathed in moments of silence. Each night was another performance, each failure another fracture. Servants observed him wandering gardens before dawn, motionless, as if unsure how to exist without instruction. One escape attempt ended in horror. Those who helped him were crucified where he could see them from his window. The message worked. Sporus stopped trying. Nero treated him with a twisted version of affection. Gifts, poetry, gentle touches, all directed at the ghost he had reconstructed. Love cannot exist where identity is destroyed. What Nero loved was not Sporus. What he loved was resurrection. And slowly the boy's mind broke beneath the pressure. He began referring to himself as Poppaea even when Nero wasn't present, speaking to mirrors in two voices, forgetting which memories were his and which were inserted. A living apparition, suspended between identities. Then the empire began to collapse. Revolt spread. The Senate turned. The Praetorian Guard deserted. Nero fled Rome with a handful of loyal servants and Sporus. Witnesses described Nero clinging to him in the final days, calling him "my only love, my resurrection," begging him to die with him like tragic lovers. When soldiers closed in, Nero prepared for suicide. His hands shook. It was Sporus who guided the blade. Nero died whispering Poppaea's name. Freedom should have come then. It didn't. Sporus instead became property passed from one powerful man to another. Galba ignored him. Otho, who had once been married to Poppaea herself, considered marrying him. Then Vitellius arrived, and with him the end. Vitellius had no interest in illusions. Sporus, to him, was entertainment. He ordered the boy to appear in the Colosseum in a reenactment of the myth of Proserpina, dragged, violated, killed for the crowd's amusement. When Sporus learned his fate, something buried for years resurfaced: choice. Rather than play one final role in the empire's endless theater of cruelty, he chose death. The accounts vary: poison, opened veins, but the meaning is unmistakable. At 20 years old, after years of being reshaped, renamed, rewritten, Sporus died not as Poppaea, not as Sabina, but as himself, refusing to perform any longer. The story of Sporus is not simply Nero's madness. It is a warning about societies that surrender truth for comfort, identity for obedience. Hundreds participated in his destruction: physicians, tutors, priests, officials, each choosing survival over humanity. The real Sporus, his voice, his dreams, his fears, is lost forever. But in his final act, he reclaimed the one thing Nero never could steal: his agency.